Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, what condition my condition was in.
Alon! Ray J claims he slept with over 11,500 women. Do you believe him?
No, I don't believe him at all. Just the numbers are astronomical.
I like the tone in your voice. You're like, no, come on.
No.
What the hell are we talking about?
What's funny is I was watching TV with my dad the other day. I was over at his place, and that headline came on like we were watching the news or something. I forget what he was watching.
And that was headline news on the lower third?
It was like it was on
There's
CNN
no
or
peace in
something.
the Middle East, but Ray J claims he slept with over 11,000 women.
It wasn't just in the lower third, Derek. Whoever these bozos were on the show, they talked about it for about 3 minutes. And I was just like, oh my God. And then the first words out of my mouth were, who's this guy think he is? Wilt Chamberlain?
Exactly. So I want to get to that conversation. So Ray J went on Cam Newton's podcast and claimed that he slept with over 11,500 women. He says he only has about 1,000 more in him.
Yeah.
He's like, oh man, I've done a lot of my life, and I think I only have like 1,000 more in me. And I was like, well, that's admirable of Ray J. I'll also say that this is the most
hang his condom up and sorry, Derek.
No, go ahead, Alon. What was your riff?
I was gonna say, hang his condom up in the rafters.
Yeah, exactly. Get that shit in the Hall of Fame with Wilt Chamberlain and I don't know, Burt Reynolds. But this was the most reasonable I've ever seen Cam Newton when he was doing his podcast, because usually he says ridiculous shit, whether he's on First Take or whatever, like the Drake May thing a year ago where he thought Drake May was disrespecting him, and I was like, that's insane, Cam. Cam actually was like, really, you Ray J, you like he wasn't believing him, and then Ray J was like, come on, man, you're a former football player. I'm sure after games you were slaying like 20 women. And he goes, nah, bro, I was not. Like that, like, thank God for Cam to like not have that ego to be like, well, I mean, it was what it was back in the day. No, Cam was reasonable and mature and just being like, no, dude, I was not having sex with 10 women after football games. That wasn't happening.
Oh God, dude. Yeah. I saw that part. And then I kind of read into it and I'm like, how does he even calculate this? Like, if you've had
sex stats, dude, he's like writing down his journals. Like,
yeah.
It's too much.
He has a scorebook. He has a clicker. He has like what an umpire has for a pitch count. I don't know if they make one that goes that high, but yeah, no. I mean, he's ridiculous. He's been ridiculous for a while, and this is total BS. There's no way. There's just no way.
Now, on the flip side, Wilt Chamberlain claims that he slept with over 20,000 women.
I believe that.
Yeah, I believe that because Wilt was a big dude. And I'm sure women are curious about that thing. With Ray J, if you've seen the Kim Kardashian video, we all have a good idea of what his hog looks like. So there you go. But even like Ray J, like when you think of like R&B artists throughout the years, he's not on the top of my list as like impactful people. Like I think maybe Usher, Chris Brown, Genuine, name them, have all been with more women than Ray J. I think Ray J's lying.
R. Kelly?
Oh, that's a whole other thing. But yeah.
No. But yeah, I shouldn't have brought that one up. But
no, you're fine. You're fine.
I don't even know any. I'm sorry, I'm not a huge Ray J fan. I don't know what's his like.
Neither am I, man.
What's his big song?
I couldn't even tell you. I could tell you like so many R&B artists, big songs. Like Genuine has Pony or Let Me Get in Those Jeans. Like Ray J, I'm like, I know him from the Kim Kardashian video. That's all I know him for.
Yeah, no, that's all I know about Ray J. Also, I think he is like a co-owner of those like knockoff AirPod earbuds. The Raycons or something.
I could see that. Okay.
I think that's it. Yeah, I don't know any of his songs. So
no,
Ray
I mean
J,
either.
sorry.
So I think that other R&B artists are putting up better numbers than him, and I think it's fraudulent with his 11,500 women, and he claims he can only do 1,000 more. But good for him. He's noble in that way. And yeah, like I said, Cam, this is probably the most the most respectful I've ever been towards Cam Newton when he's doing an interview. Where I'm like, all right, Cam, at least you're not being ridiculous and saying like, oh yeah, I put up those same numbers. The whole thing was insane to me, but thoroughly entertaining. Just your opinion, man. Alon to say, Derek Papa, we're coming to you on a Sunday afternoon, and we are on post Game 7. There was 3 Game 7s this weekend in the Eastern Conference of the NBA playoffs, and we are. Yep, it just went final right now. The Detroit Pistons beat the Orlando Magic. They're advancing to the second round of the playoffs. Who they will play, we'll find out later tonight as the Raptors take on the Cavaliers in the other Game 7 going on this weekend. We'll talk about what happened with the Celtics blowing a 3-1 lead, and I think it's anyone's Eastern Conference right now, Alon. We'll talk about it more, but an all-time collapse, and it may just been the emergence of Joel Embiid in this series that changed things for the Celtics and the 76ers. But we're going to talk a lot of basketball today. We'll talk about the NBA playoffs, what's going on with Steve Kerr, some comments from Draymond Green and his podcast. So we're going to keep it a lot with basketball. But yeah, what have you made of the NBA playoffs so far, Alon? It's been fun. It's been, even though like it's not as close as I would like it to be, the series have been close. Like a lot of teams that could close out a series, the Celtics, the Lakers, who else that has had elimination games but have blown it. In the end, we've had 3 Game 7s, the surprise with the Timberwolves, even though you called it, with the Nuggets. We'll get all into that today, but so far so good with the first round of the NBA playoffs. It's been entertaining.
Yeah, I get what you're saying too about it's been close series wise, like because every
the games
team
itself not so much.
Exactly. Yeah, the games, it's been a lot of double-digit margins in a lot of these games. And, I mean, look no further than the closeout game the Knicks had the other night. I mean, that was ridiculous.
Yeah.
What were they up by? It was like 70 to 20. 51. Yeah. I mean, it was insane. And, but yeah, so hopefully we get some more competitive, like in the game kind of moments, although I will say that Lakers Rockets series had its moments, but yeah, the series have been close. The game's not so much, but it's been a good watch for the first half of a lot of these games. Usually in the third quarter, it kind of falls off for some of them.
No, it definitely does. And by the way, if some people, and my guy Ernie's in the chat right now, we'll probably have others pop in. If you're expecting us to talk about the shitty-ass Giants, that's not going down on this show. We'll talk about that plenty on KMBR tomorrow. Should Bryce Eldridge be called up? I'm like, I don't think it's going to make a difference, but go ahead. They're in trouble. And I don't think it's anything with Tony Vitello. I think it's just the team. And you may have to consider some drastic changes with the Giants going forward. I'm talking about trading guys like Matt Chapman maybe. They definitely need a rebuild. This is not working with Willie Adames and Rafael Devers. So anyway, I said we weren't going to talk about them, and we're not. So just stay tuned for everything with the Giants. They're just unwatchable. It's ridiculous.
They can't score, Derek. They can't score.
They're the worst offense in all of baseball right now, Alon. Like you see some promise with other teams, like the Phillies. Yes, their record's bad, but they have a lot of talent on that team. Same thing with the Mets. The Giants, it's like, what the hell's going on here? And it's the same mistakes. Ryan Walker should not have been out there today. He should be called down at this point. I don't know why he's on the team. Anyway, like I said, not worth talking about. They had an all-time bad 6 games here, back-to-back series where they got swept by the Phillies and the Tampa Bay Rays. So yeah, they're just unwatchable. Anyway, let's talk about the Golden State Warriors and Steve Kerr. So last time I was on, I did the show with the John Middlecoff interview, and I mentioned briefly that we had new development, kind of, with Steve Kerr and his future with the Warriors. So Ramona Shelburne, Shams Charania, and Anthony Slater put out an article saying that Steve Kerr met with the brass of Joe Lacob and Mike Dunleavy Jr. last Monday. They spoke for about 2 hours, and both parties decided that they'll reconvene next week, which will be this week, maybe tomorrow, maybe later this week. Steve always planned a golfing trip. And what's going on, Otis Bird? We got everybody in the chat right now. But Steve said that he's going to do a golfing trip. I heard maybe at Augusta. But when Steve golfs, you know it's going to be the most luxurious spots where he could definitely tee off. But Steve was always going to have a golfing trip. So he's going to come back, and then we go from there. But I think a lot of people are saying that this is trending in the right direction of Steve returning. where before when Monty Poole was reporting that it's a 15 to 20% chance that he returns, I think that's increased. My thing was last time, Alon, if both parties wanted a divorce, they probably would have done that last week with the meeting that they had. And I think Joe Lacob's looking for any excuse at this point not to bring Steve Kerr back. If Joe Lacob wanted to move on, he probably would have told him, like, it's just not going to work out, man. Like, your philosophy is different than where we're going as far as the direction of this basketball team and what we want to do, where we want to get younger. And the truth is, they don't want to get younger. Getting younger means moving off of Steph Curry. That's what that means. So whatever quick fix you want to do, and we know the names by now, whatever quick fix you want to do this offseason, then you should include Steve Kerr with that. So I think it's all contingent on what Steve wants to do right now. Joe knows that if he doesn't bring back Steve, he's pissing off Steph and he's pissing off Draymond. To a degree, we'll play what Draymond had to say as well. But, yeah, I think that Joe wants to make his superstar happy, and that's the way he's gone about things for a long time now. So he's just waiting on Steve, and then he can, if Steve doesn't come back, he blames it on Steve Kerr. I don't think they're pushing a multi-year contract on him. I think they know that Steve just wants to do one more year and then get out. So the likelihood of him returning, I think, increased this past week with the news that they've prolonged this. Well, they've prolonged this meeting, and I think the fact that what was stated in this article was they don't want to rush things. There's no reason to rush. Well, if you're not willing to rush things, that means you want him back. The big talking point that came from this article was, I had it written down here if I can find it. The biggest takeaway was there's an agreed belief that Kerr still makes sense as the head coach leading a firm playoff contender built around Steph Curry and Draymond Green, but not necessarily the fresh face of a reconstruction. So they're not going to do the reconstruction right now. That's down the line. They still want to find a way to win a championship, and the best person to do that is Steve Kerr.
No, it is. And I think Joe Lacob knows that probably his best chance of also guaranteeing bringing one more superstar, even an aging superstar, into the fold is to not blow up the situation between, Steve Kerr being the coach of the team and still having Steph Curry and Draymond Green. So, like, I understand that aging superstars would probably still want to come play with Steph, but it makes it a lot. Why add another variable in there by getting rid of Steve Kerr? The other thing is, if they were going to have a separation, it probably would have happened 2 to 3 days after their season ended. It just from an organizational an operational standpoint.
Why do you say that, Alon?
Because you got to start getting ready for what's happening in the future. And
yeah, I agree with that.
The longer you, and I'm not saying it's like the NFL cycle. It's not like that where you got to make the decision real quick. It's not like that at all. Basketball is a lot slower in that standpoint. But when you're making this kind of monumental decision in your organization, you don't want to let something linger and hang over the organization. You want to be able to just have a fresh start and then move on. So the longer that they let this drag out and the more positive things, I guess, come out in the media, I would say the chances are going up. What I don't know is what that relationship looks like between Joe and Steve. And maybe that relationship doesn't have to be great, but I think Joe Lacob should try to find it in himself to be kind of the bigger or, a good leader and give him like a 1 year with an option for another. That's all on Steve. And I'm not expecting that he's going to take that option for the second year, but just putting it out there as an action of goodwill, saying like, hey, Steve, the ball's in your court. Like, this is your choice.
Yeah, I think that I'm with you on them not wanting this to go longer in the offseason. I think that if they wanted to move on, they wouldn't have done it a couple of days after the season ended. I think they want to give Steve Kerr his time, and he's earned that right. I think, though, if they wanted to move on, it would have been this past week where they all were in the same room together and they know where things are trending towards. And I think that Joe, I've said this numerous times, if Joe wanted to move off of Steve Kerr, he would have done it at this point. And I don't think he can, because then he knows that Steph is not going to be happy with that decision. And I think that if you asked him behind closed doors, that's what he wants to do. But he also knows that the best thing for this team to get that 5th championship is to have Steve Kerr come back. Now, are they realistic expectations of getting a 5th championship with Steph Curry and Draymond Green, this aging roster? Probably not. But Joe is also in the, as Buster Posey is, the memory-making business. So it does bring fans back to the arena when you still have those 3 guys there. And then you can have a big send-off. I think that's what they want, honestly. I think they want to give Steve Kerr his flowers, and that will be the way that this thing goes, as far as Steve Kerr's end with the Golden State Warriors. But they also want him to lead them in the right direction going forward. They want it to be where once he leaves, the next guy that takes over is in a good spot with a contender. But I highly doubt that at this point. I don't think Giannis is coming. The way LeBron's playing, why wouldn't he stay in LA? Yeah. And Kawhi, that's easier said than done. I could see why Kawhi would want to join the Warriors, but not for the mid-level. And it wouldn't be advantageous for the Clippers to do that because they didn't want to trade Paul George from the Clippers to the Warriors. And now look where Paul George is doing with the 76ers. So, yeah, I do think it's going to end with Steve Kerr coming back. And I know there's a lot has been made. He did the New Yorker interview talking about politics and the 3-point line for a guy that he's just like Popovich now. For a guy that uses the 3-point line a shit ton as a coach, he hates it. Like he wants basketball to go back to the way it was. And I get that. There's talk about him potentially going into television again. I think he's weighing his options because you have to when you're currently unemployed. But I think if you ask Steve Kerr what he really wants to do, he wants to go back one last year for Steph and for Draymond and to not have Joe interfere. I don't know about the relationship that's been brought up. I think it's where Steve respects Joe Lacob as an owner and what he's done financially for the organization. But as far as his basketball intellect, I think Steve would prefer if he just stayed out of his way. Because, yes, I will admit that Steve has made some interesting decisions. Not just him. It's not all just Steve. It is Steph. It is Draymond. It's Mike Dunleavy Jr. It's when these superstars tell you, I can't play with Jordan Poole anymore. This guy, I know he's young and he brings a lot to the table, but he can't get past Draymond Green punching him in the face. James Wiseman, he's young, but we want to win right now. We got to move on. Jonathan Kuminga, yes, there's a ton of potential there, but we're on the court. When we are on the court and he takes the ball and doesn't run the offense, what the fuck am I supposed to do? So these are all frustrations that have built over to the veterans. At this point, the veterans are going to get what they want. Or I'm sure Lacob's frustrated because we're wasting away draft picks, but that's what happens when you have these expectations while at the same time you're trying to get younger. I know they fucked this thing up. And the right thing to do probably is to blow it all up. But they're not going to do that. They're going to bring everybody back for one last dance, one final reckoning, and that's the best way to go. Now, I will say this about Steve. I've been talking with my pops a lot about this. And my dad thinks that it's probably in Steve's best interest to walk away because there's a point in life where you just get tired of something. And my dad talked about it. He goes, basketball is a grind. It is where you are on the road all the time. Think about Steve's basketball life. Think about him playing in the NBA since the late 80s. I mean, before that, being on that Arizona team with Tom, Lute Olson, and then going into the NBA, being that 6th man off the bench, having a ton of success, but going from team to team, then going to the Bulls, then going to San Antonio and traveling all the time. It gets old. And then not to mention him going into the NBA and being a coach, everything that he's had to deal with, the back issues that he's had, deaths of assistant coaches. It's been a lot for Steve. So my dad was talking about one coach he used to know back in the day. I forget his name, and this is not going to do justice to the story, but he's telling me about this coach was getting older in his life, and he always would say, there's a point where I would drive down the road, and to the left was where all my friends were fishing, and to the right was where the basketball facility was. And every day I would contemplate, do I want to go left today, or do I want to go right? And every day he kept going right for years. And then one day he went left, and that was the end. And he knew that he made the right decision. Once you start thinking about going left in life, you've already retired. So I understand that mindset with Steve, but I'm sure he wants to go right just one last time because Steph and Draymond are waving him in.
I like that. That's a good story, and it's a good analogy too. I mean, not just for this, for a lot of things in life. Once you start getting those thoughts creeping in of like, I need to do something different, or I'm cooked. I'm done. I don't know if Steve Kerr is exactly there yet, but it's the only reason he's not exactly there yet is because of like what you said, Derek. It's the guys keeping him in this place. It's Steph, it's Draymond, it's some of those other players. I think it's guys like Jimmy that he really, really likes too.
He learned to like him. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah,
I do think they were a little apprehensive, I guess, about Jimmy's arrival, just because of what happened in the past with Eric Spoelstra. It seemed that they were skeptical that first day. I remember it was a game against the Jazz where both Steve and Steph in the post-game comments were just like, we'll see about this. And then they learned to love him. But yes, you are right. Go on.
Yeah, no, I mean, it took time to develop, and a lot of that is, you're right, because of the baggage that Jimmy brought over, whether he was when he was on the Bulls or when he was Minnesota, but or I almost said Cleveland, but the Heat. But yeah, Steve is at that point where this is probably his last chance, not just to be really competitive in the NBA, but just his last chance to put all of himself into this with these guys once again. And so I think he's going to take that chance. But after this, you mentioned the TV stuff. He's great on TV. I wouldn't mind that again.
Steve? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I also know, though, that he's got a great basketball mind, and I would love to see him. He doesn't have to take on a Pat Riley role. And guess what? That's not going to happen with this organization. Joe Lacob is not going to hire him to be the Pat Riley of the Golden State Warriors. It's not going to happen. But I could see him going and being kind of a Jerry West kind of guy for a different team, or a couple of different teams over the years. But all of that is so far in the future, and what we need to focus on is next year and what they do in this offseason. Priority number one, make Steph Curry happy. How do you do that? You keep Steve Kerr. And then you figure out, you've already delayed blowing up this team for 3 years now. So you're stuck with it. This is the best possible situation that you can make of it by keeping Steve Kerr. That's the best way you can do it. As far as like this big send-off, I don't want the season to turn into a massive like a Mariano Rivera kind of retirement thing, or
Steve won't have it that way. He'll definitely, I don't know if he'll even acknowledge like this is my last season. But I think the Warriors PR will make it appear that way.
Yeah. And I think the Warriors PR will make it appear that way too. And I don't want them to do it. I know why they would do it from a standpoint of selling the show and getting people in the gates, things like that, making it a big spectacle. But if we're going to have one last year of Steve Kerr with Steph Curry and Draymond Green, assuming Kristaps Porzingis is there, Jimmy Butler, and we're going to have, a decent team, at least for 1 year on paper, I don't want there to be any distractions in terms of the team putting any extra distractions. I want it to just be Steve coaching basketball. I want a veteran-laden team, which is usually not the best strategy because you need youth, especially in today's NBA. But I want him to be able to go out there, just do the job, not have to do a lot of personality management, not have to do a lot of player development, and I just want him to be able to coach. And if the team can stay healthy, that's what I want to see. If not, if the team's not able to stay healthy, then I want him to at least have a fun time with his guys one last time.
That's what I think Steve wants it to be. I think it's clear last year he was not coaching with joy. It was a headache for him. It was just too much. You could see it in his face. And then they got rid of Kuminga. And even though they weren't winning, he liked the scrappiness of Guy Santos and Pat Spencer and Quinton Post. He liked all those guys. He likes coaching those guys. I think he knows they're not going to win a championship, and maybe that's a little bit of, was this all for then? But as long as Steph's there and Draymond's there, I think he wants to be there for his guys. So if I had to guess right now, we'll find out the next couple of days here. I do think Steve Kerr is going to return for maybe a 1 year plus an option, but it really is just for Steve to come back for 1 year. The best case scenario for me is Steve returns and they know their coach in waiting, whether that's Jerry Stackhouse or somebody else, maybe Terry Stotts. But then again, I think the organization wants to get younger. That's why you're hearing all of these rumors about Todd Golden, or I don't even know who else is out there. But I do think when they do move on from Steve Kerr, it may not be a retread. Now that I say Jerry Stackhouse and Terry Stotts, that would be good, I guess, short-term solutions to just try to contend. But I do think this organization realizes they need to do a massive rebuild. And it's probably easier to do that with Steph still on the roster, but Steph doesn't want to do that. They're just like the Giants. They are fucked in a way. Like they know this might be, the Warriors are way more watchable than the Giants, but yes, at least you're going to watch Steph Curry and Draymond Green, but they know in the end, this is not going to equate to a whole hell of a lot right now. Otis Bird in the chat here says, Iggy, even though I'm not sure he wants to coach. I don't think so, Otis. Even if he did want to coach, I think Andre, I like Andre a lot, but I don't know if that's what they need right now. I think they need a guy that has experience coaching, whether that is at the college level or professional level. And I know that Steve Kerr wasn't that guy, but you could just tell the type of guy that Steve Kerr was in the NBA and the way he was on broadcast, that it probably was going to, in the end, result in him being a really good coach. Just being around Popovich and being around Phil Jackson. Not to say that Andre Iguodala is not capable of that. I think the biggest thing is I don't think he wants to do that. I think that Andre loves just being Andre, golfing. I doubt he wants to coach.
I could see Andre being an incredible player development kind of guy. I don't see him at this point wanting to be the guy who's he's a professional. He's a consummate professional. And I don't know if he wants to deal with people who are not, at times, especially younger people who are not going to be that consummate professional. And I think that's really the barrier there for Andre. It's not that he's not capable of doing it. I don't think he wants to put up with some of the bullshit that you have to as a head coach, which Steve Kerr has done a great job of doing, probably because he learned from guys like Greg Popovich, like Phil Jackson. As far as, going in a different direction, Stackhouse is an interesting one. That's a name that gets floated around a lot.
Where was he? He was at Vanderbilt, right?
Correct. Yeah, I think he
didn't have a ton of success as head coach there.
He didn't. The one guy I really like, and I'm a little biased, but I give an accurate assessment of it would be Nate Oates. If you could figure out a way to get Nate Oates from the University of Alabama to take your coaching job, it would be tough because he's one of the top 5 highest paid coaches in college right now, and he's got an extension through 2031. But he kind of checks all those boxes of what you would want in an NBA coach. I, for a long time, have said that his style does not fit college. It fits the NBA, not just his leadership style, but his play style. It's a lot of good guard play. I mean, he does care about the defensive end, but not in the way that a lot of college coaches do, where they almost sacrifice their offense in order to only give up 50 points a game. I think Nate Oates would be really fun, but that's a pipe dream. I mean, that is probably not going to happen. So you're looking at other options here. You're going to have to get a guy like a Stackhouse for 1 or 2 years before maybe. And if he pans out, Mike Brown would be interesting, but we've talked about that. That's not on the table either. So,
well, it could be if the Knicks don't get to the finals, which now with the Celtics being out, there's a lot of pressure on them now.
There's a ton of pressure. And if they don't make it to the finals, he might get absolutely just, messed up by the media up there in New York, but
probably,
yeah. But I mean, if one of these other guys that they're able to plug and play after next year is able to be successful, then you ride with that. But generally, these things don't work in the sense of we moved off a generational talent at head coach, and then the next guy we bring in is just as good or almost as good and keeps us at that level. Usually, there's an in-between guy. And it sucks for the in-between guy because it's a great opportunity, but that's usually how it works in professional sports.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens there when it comes to a possible replacement. But I think at this point, I think everybody wants Steve Kerr to return, and it's all just on Steve if he wants to, including Draymond Green. I think Draymond Green wants him to return, and he does. He's been vocal about that. But also Draymond has, whenever he's on his podcast, he brings up topics that I'm like, you're just talking too much. Like, I don't think you need to say that. And that's the case with his latest one. If you pull this up, Alon, where Draymond went on his podcast, he talked about the impact Steve Kerr's had on him. At the same time, he also talks about how Steve Kerr has hindered his career. And it left me kind of scratching my head. But here's Draymond Green on the Draymond Green podcast.
He's such a unique person. There's things he's done that I can never forgive him for. And yet I will do anything for him. When you spend 14 years with someone, when you've had the runs that we've had, playing the role that I've had to play and being who I've had to be, some things like that are going to happen. Everything hasn't just been one way. It hasn't just been like, oh, man, Draymond did this, Steve's mad. I don't take that any way at all. Speaking of this December thing, I spoke to him after that, and it was like, I don't think you like me. I don't think you've ever liked me, if I'm honest. Like, he cried. Like, really? However, what he's meant to me in my life, what he's taught me in my life, just telling him in our exit interview, the things that he's taught me about being a winner, I'm not sure where else I could have got that. I played for Tom Izzo, and Steve just took that to a completely different level, and especially showing me things about this level and winning. Like, I could never repay him for that. It's so important to who I've become. As much as he's done for me in basketball, a part of me think he's hindered me in my career and what I could have become. You know, when KD came from 2016 on, I have not had a play in our playbook. Not a single play that we run for me in our playbook since 2016. But if you're going to take one gripe and not be able to move past it for all the other things, then you're shallow as a person. That says more about you as a person than it does about Steve or whoever else in that instant. You got to take the good with the bad, man.
So that's a very, very interesting rant that Draymond Green went on, where I totally understand what he's talking about. There's a lot of things that have happened between him and Steve throughout their tenure together in 14 years. And we all know what they're about, whether it was, you know, him being suspended or the blow-ups, the one game in OKC where they're screaming at each other. And Draymond acknowledges that he's made him a better person. The part that's kind of interesting to me is where he says, there's some things I just can't forgive Steve for. And I'm like, well, I wonder what that is. Even like this past year with the December, you know, blow up they had where Steve just told him, get off the court, man, you're bugging me. And I think that's just two competitors in the moment just screaming at each other. And for Draymond to say to Steve, I don't think you've ever liked me. Like that's something where if you've worked together, if you work with somebody for a long time and you battle with them, and sometimes you just kind of let things go. But when you really have an honest conversation with someone and you say, you may put up with me, but you really don't like me. That's a strong thing to discuss. And I'm sure they hash it out and they're better for it. The part that I'm kind of like, I don't know about that, Draymond, is where he says, in a way, he's hindered my career. And I know that he's being mature about it and saying, if you focus too much on that, then what kind of person are you to not just focus on that and not focus on the positives? But what Draymond's saying is, since 2016, he hasn't had one play drawn up for him offensively. Well, why do you think that is? You have Steph Curry, arguably the greatest offensive player in the history of the NBA, along with Kevin Durant, another all-time great. It was bound to be where Draymond Green's not going to get the ball. So Draymond, the type of player he was prior to that, was a really good defensive player, but also every now and then he had these games. I think he had 5 threes in that game 7 when they lost to the Cavs. So he was capable of that. But for Draymond to be like, I could have been that player my entire career, I highly doubt that, man. I see it as, and I know that Steve Kerr's not this defensive guru, but he made him into a Hall of Famer by making him focus on his defense way more than his offense. So you got to give props to Steve Kerr for that. Even though he's not teaching Draymond how to be that player, he knew the role he had to play. So that's the part where I'm like, Draymond, I hear you, man, and I respect everything you're saying, but I do not think Steve Kerr hindered your career with what you could have been offensively.
No, it's not true. That comment's so interesting too, because in a way he's saying, you know, he's throwing a little bit of shade towards Steve Kerr in that regard, and then giving him his own self a pat on the back by saying, well, you know, a person who would focus on that is really shallow. So you got to focus on the good and not so much the bad. And I'm like,
exactly.
All right, Draymond. Yeah, I see what you did there. I get it. These guys have egos and Draymond has a big one, but he played for 2 coaches who maximized him. It maximized him in what he could do as a leader and what in his development as a player. He played for Tom Izzo, who got him to a certain level. And then he at Michigan State, and then he goes and plays for Steve Kerr, who took that, just like what Draymond said, it took it and totally expanded it. And Draymond's value, especially post 2016, has been so much bigger than just the numbers that he puts up. It's been everything else, and the defensive numbers, the defensive analytics. That's where he really shines. But this idea that he would be scoring, you know, I think in that game 7, he had like 32 or 34 points. And that was a great offensive game, probably his best offensive game of all time in his career, at least in the big moment too.
He would have been MVP of that series had they won. Yeah,
sure. Yeah. Oh, for sure. But that's not him. That was him in that moment, rising to the occasion. We know he's skilled. We know he is capable of it, but that was a big game moment that he has the fortitude to rise up and meet. But this idea that, you know, oh, Steve, you know, I don't think you've ever liked me. If Steve Kerr never liked Draymond Green, guess who would have been out that door so many times? Draymond Green. And it never happened. So and Steve's also, I talk about his personality management all the time, but Steve is also mature enough to go, this guy's so good that even if I don't get along with him 24/7, I respect him enough as a player and as a man to treat him well and have him on the team because I know the value that he brings to us. But I don't think there's ever been a moment where Steve Kerr has been like, I don't like Draymond Green. I do think there's been a lot of moments where Steve Kerr has gone, Draymond, get the hell out of my face right now. Draymond, I can't deal with this at the moment. Draymond, we're pissed off at each other. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that you don't like someone, that you don't love someone. They love each other. They do. And Draymond eventually will figure that out. But Steve, hey, look, there's a reason there's a good chance he'll come back. Draymond is one of those reasons.
Oh, yeah. I think that's the biggest reason. And Otis Bird in the chat here says, for real, pretty wild. Draymond said that about Kerr. Could have easily let Draymond go after the dissension with the pool punch. Absolutely. I think that was a big conversation that they were having behind the scenes. And I can't wait for the 30 for 30. And I think it's going to have to be multiple parts. It probably won't be even a 30 for 30. It will be on some streaming platform where we get part 6 of the Warriors documentary, where how close it was that they were going to get rid of Draymond Green before that season. And no suspension, nothing like that before the season started. Well, he went away from the team, but like not suspended in the regular season. They wanted Draymond Green to be there. And I think Joe Lacob had a hard time telling Draymond, you're not getting your ring that night. So that was probably the closest it came to them saying goodbye to him. And I'm sure Steph Curry at that point couldn't do anything about it. Because we say all these things, like if Steve Kerr wanted Draymond Green out, then he would have been out. It really is Steph. Steph's the guy every time banging the table, being like, I want this guy on my team. I need him. He chose Draymond over Jordan Poole. That's the truth. Every time Steph Curry's chosen a veteran over the younger player that they've had on the team. And Steve Kerr gets blamed for that. I wonder how, one thing I've been thinking about with the Nuggets losing is Michael Malone. And we'll talk about it more. But Michael Malone, I still have a hard time with the fact that this guy's not the coach of the Denver Nuggets anymore. I can't understand it, honestly. It's one of the more baffling things in all of sports, where this guy took them to the NBA Finals, won it, and then a year and a half later, he's fired. It's not like Doug Peterson after they won the Super Bowl with the Eagles, where you knew that, all right, this guy just didn't have it. He got lucky in that game, going for it on fourth down continuously, and the talent that he had. But it wasn't him, really. With Michael Malone, he was the reason why they were playing well. And I'll never forget, after that Game 7, they blow a 20-point lead to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Michael Malone does his press conference afterwards and says, well, we got to come back and we got to be better. And we got to look at we have to look at the tape. And a lot of these guys don't want to do that. A lot of these guys get mad at me when I yell and scream in the locker room, but that's necessary things that we have to do. And you could tell that he was losing the locker room a little bit with his style. But I still don't think there was a respect factor. I just think that Michael Malone was a tyrant. So I think Steve Kerr is not on the same level as Michael Malone as far as, his anger and yelling at people. But I think it's clear that he's not the same coach that he used to be back in the day. He is a guy that doesn't really know how to coach younger players anymore. And that hard-ass way of coaching doesn't jive with today's youth. And Steph Curry can handle that. Draymond Green can handle that. But it's clear that Jonathan Kuminga could not handle that. So, and I think even the Brandon Podziemski moment this past year, Steve Kerr was yelling at Will Richard too. I think that's the stuff that Joe Lacob looks at and he's like, I don't know if I want that in a coach anymore. I want a guy that can relate to Gen Z and not the guy that's going to chastise these young players, which I have a hard time with, but I think that's the way the NBA is going.
Well, if Joe Lacob thinks that, I hope he's happy with, you might get a championship here and there, but you ain't going to build any dynasty. I mean, unless you just have generational players all over the place and you're just so much better than everybody else. Look, maybe I'm an old man, but and maybe you are too, Derek, but there has to be. I'm old in my ways
now, Alon.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be an aspect of domineering that has to come in there, and I'm not talking about a guy who hasn't earned it. You have to earn it, right? And Steve Kerr did it the right way. He came in, he developed younger players at the time, And as they grew and matured, he realized what they could handle. And he realized that, hey, to get to this next level of greatness, I am going to have to be like some of my predecessors. I am going to have to be like Popovich. I am going to have to be like Phil Jackson. And that's the right thing. That's how you sustain greatness. That's how you win a bonus championship when you probably shouldn't have against the Celtics. So those are the things that drive a team to become a dynasty and to be great. If that's not going to fly, then you can't even go to the college ranks for a future head coach. You can't. You're going to have to find someone, you're not an elite college coach. You're going to have to find, because they're all assholes. You're going to have to find someone who's in the NBA currently who can get along with these guys and be their buddy. I mean, it almost gets to the point to what some of these professional soccer teams do. They hire guys who are literally just managers. And I mean personality management. Not guys who are going to be all up on someone's ass. And the great coaches, just like in every other sport, in that sport, they are the ones who are on someone's ass. And, you know, if Joe Lacob doesn't want that, I think that's a sad day for the organization, because you mentioned Malone. The power in the part you didn't mention was the power struggle between him and the front office. Calvin Booth, and the ownership decided, to hell with this. I'm going to fire both of you, which was an insane move. But that's the way it went. But yeah, I think you need, if you really want to be great, you need the Bill Belichick, you need the Malone, you need the Steve Kerr, you need guys like that. Because if you don't have that, I mean, then what? Okay, you hire some whiz kid who knows the X's and O's, whether it's basketball or any other sport. But then what about when you're in the trenches? What about when you're there in game 6 or game 7 and you're down and you need to get your guys fired up? You need to take a technical or something like that. And that's not you. And then everybody sees you do it and it's performative. No, you need someone who's battle hardened. And that's what Steve Kerr brings. And I don't want to see this organization in a situation where they hire someone who's a placater. I need someone who's a leader, not a placater.
Exactly. You know, we're past the days of players, coaches with the Warriors. Like, they're trying to win. Yeah. So I don't like that mentality right now in the NBA, where, yes, you have guys that are innovative with play calling, but at the same time, you need guys that can galvanize the locker room. And that's what maybe is going on with the Giants and Tony Vitello right now, where, yes, he's a good speaker and he may say these Ted Lasso type quotes that get guys fired up, but they're not playing well on right now with the team. So it is what it is. Look who's back in the chat. What up, Rocka New Era? Rocka New Era showing up today, saying players and young generation is soft. SOFT soft. Dante Whitmore. Yeah, they are soft. That's what's going on in today's era of the NBA. I think more so in any other sport. You're getting guys that are capable of handling, are basically babysitters, know that they can't chastise or challenge these new players. So they say all the right things. They don't say anything in the media, and they're really good basketball minds. But as you said, Alon, when it comes to when you have these moments where there's adversity, then these players don't know what to do, or these coaches don't know what to do. It's where the players take over the locker room. And you got to have those hard asses. You got to have guys like Steve Kerr and Eric Spoelstra and Michael Malone. But those guys are the bad guys now. So if that's what Joe Lacob's talking about with the philosophical differences between the two guys, then I'm sorry. Like, you need that in basketball. I can't stand that mentality now, where you get a lot of guys that are pushovers these days. And Steve Kerr is the last of a dying breed that will yell at a Brandon Pajemski on the court. That's what this team needs right now, because all these guys are knuckleheads. They need to know what the fuck they have to do.
No, they're not, man, they're knuckleheads. But yeah, and soft, SOFT, like
you know what's soft?
Like Sorry, Swan.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Shout out to our guy, rest in peace, George Atkinson. You know what's soft is AJ Cruz. I was lurking, but I'm here too. Oh, you want attention, huh? Okay, AJ Cruz. Okay.
AJ, lurker. You're a lurker, bro. You're a lurker,
huh?
Oh
okay.
My gosh. Yeah, lurker. But yeah, no, I don't want to see that. And yeah, those guys are the bad guys. And I love Eric Spoelstra. He's probably, outside of Steve Kerr, he's been my favorite NBA coach for a while. I just love the way he does things. I love all the knowledge he was able to absorb from Riles. I mean, it's great to watch. But yeah, it is a dying breed. And just going back to what I was saying earlier, like, that's the problem. If you do get some of these like really high level college coaches, that's not going to work. If you have a philosophical difference with Steve Kerr, who I think is right on that line, some of these high-level college guys, like, they're going to tear you a new one, and they'll be, and the players will go complain to ownership, and then they'll get fired unless the results are really good. I mean, I think a perfect example, maybe not so perfect, but what happened to David Blatt. I thought he was a really good coach, and LeBron just could not put up with his kind of hard style of coaching. He didn't want it because it was LeBron's team in Cleveland. And
just the timeline with that, they hired David Blatt, and then LeBron chose to come back to the Cavaliers.
Correct.
I'm sure David Blatt wasn't planning on that. That rhymes. And I remember one in particular. They lost that first finals to the Warriors.
Yes.
And I want to say David Blatt was fired the next year, and that's when Ty Lue was the interim head coach. Yes. Yeah. It was when LeBron James was in the huddle, and David Blatt called up a play, and he was like, "No, we're not doing that. Fuck that. We're not doing that." That's when you knew there's no chance for David Blatt with this team.
Yeah, there wasn't. And so that's LeBron James, a generational player, maybe the best player of all time doing that. So understood. But now there's a lot of players acting like they're that guy. That
exactly
that act that they can undermine the coach that way. And hey, look, you might have a difference of opinions in the huddle, but sometimes you just got to go do what you got to do. And he does his job, you do your job sometimes. And not everybody's LeBron James. That's the thing. Not everybody's LeBron James. So if you're not LeBron James, I don't want to hear it out of you.
But even LeBron James, like, let's be honest about the coaches he's had. He handpicked Ty Lue. Mike Brown's not the biggest disciplinarian, so he got by with that. He actually didn't respect Mike Brown either on the way out. The hardest coach he ever had was Eric Spoelstra, but that was when Eric Spoelstra wasn't Eric Spoelstra. That was when he was learning how to be the next Pat Riley. And LeBron James dictated what was going on with the Heat. So let's not act like LeBron James got the best coaching either. Like he says, like, oh, I would have loved to play for Steve Kerr or Greg Popovich. And he probably would have, but those guys would have challenged him in ways that he wouldn't like. So it's going to be very interesting to see if Steve Kerr in his last year, if he does come back, how he handles things with Joe Lacob and the perception that he's a hard ass with some of the players, which I think that they need. If they want to be great, they need to be challenged. Let's move over to the NBA playoffs.
Yeah.
Because we haven't talked a lot about what's been going on. And actually, as we talked about earlier, it's been competitive as far as the series. The games itself, there's been some close games. The game yesterday, the game 7 between the Celtics and 76ers was really fun. But this is the first time since 2014 that we saw 3 series in the first round go to game 7s. And the Celtics, let's just start with them because that's the biggest surprise to this point. I was shocked they blew their 3-1 lead because I thought it was going to be where they're going to run away with the East. I thought that the Pistons are a young and upcoming team. The Knicks, I'm still not buying. The fact that the Celtics stayed afloat and were really a dominant team for the most part in the East, and that's saying a lot. And then actually, that's not saying a lot because the East is not as competitive as the West. But the fact that team was able to finish as the 2 seed with Jason Tatum being out for the majority of the season was unbelievable. So I thought you and I picked the games. We'll go through it a little later. And I guess I got to do hot sauce today because you wiped the floor with me along when it came to first round NBA playoff picks. But I thought the Celtics were going to win in 5. You thought the Celtics were going to sweep. And they were dominating that series until Joel Embiid came back. I was watching the game. I think it was game 4 where Embiid comes back for the first time with my pops. And my dad the whole time was like, look at Embiid. He's so fucking slow. Would Rick Celebrini ever clear him to play? This is a joke. And then you saw him turn it on a little bit. And so the last game the Celtics won against the Sixers was 128-96. That was Joel Embiid's first game back. And then they're leading a game in game 5 in Philadelphia. And then Joel Embiid has a great performance, 33 points. They can't stop him. Then they win game 6, and it's tied up 3-3. And then Jason Tatum gets hurt. And you're like, okay, we'll play in game 7. No, because of the Achilles tear, they don't want to fuck around with that leg issue. So he sits out, and they're probably thinking, yeah, whatever, okay. Celtics, we've been dominant for the most part this season. We won without Jason Tatum. We'll do it again. No, they get dominated for the most part yesterday in game 7, and they come back. Jaylen Brown kept him in that game. But the lack of size that the Celtics have is unbelievable. They could not match up with Joel Embiid. So give credit to Nick Nurse, Tyrese Maxey, what's his name? Edgecombe, the guy they drafted. Was it VJ Edgecombe?
VJ, yeah.
And give it up to Joel Embiid, man, for him to come back and have that performance. Unbelievable for the 76ers to upset the Celtics. And now the Celtics 2 years in a row get upset by division opponents in the Eastern Conference, with the Knicks last year, this year the 76ers. And I don't know if they're going to make massive changes, because I don't think they need to, but it's not where they expected to be 2 years removed from a championship.
They need Jason Tatum to be healthy. And I know he played in 6 games, but that's an issue. But to Joel Embiid's credit, look, I love Embiid. I love the way he plays. When he's on the court, he's incredible. There's always been this narrative of he is a little bit soft, but he kind of showed that he could come back, and maybe he's not 100% ready yet. And he's almost averaging 30 points a game for the 4 games he's played. They were already getting good guard play out of Maxey and Edgecombe, like you mentioned. So
yeah.
you add Joel Embiid, and the whole series just flips. I was telling you before the show, Derek, but I'll say it here for everybody. This is how insane this was for the Celtics and for the 76ers. The 76ers all time were 0-18 in any series when trailing 3-1. The Celtics were 32-0 all time when leading a series 3-1. That's just insanity. I mean, that is some insane stuff right there. And Joel Embiid was just the missing ingredient. I'm shocked that it happened. I thought even with Joe, let's say Joel Embiid plays the whole series going into this, I still would have picked the Celtics.
Yeah.
Clearly that is not the case. The 76ers with Joel Embiid have their number, or at least they do right now. And I don't know. The Celtics don't need to make wholesale changes. They have a good core, with Brown and Tatum, but
get a big though.
That's a gut punch.
Like who's their 5?
Who is their 5?
I saw him play. Like he's like a Draymond out there. We're like, yeah, he could defend and he could fit that role, but like he doesn't have a lot of size to him. Like Joel Embiid was taking him to school. Like I'm pretty sure they picked up Vucevic, but they need more size on that team. It's all 3-point shooting.
Yeah. No, it is all 3. You know what? It is all 3-point shooting. That is a massive problem. And that's one of the things where they get exposed on. I think the other thing they got exposed on was they didn't have anybody who could stay out of giving Embiid, especially in this last game. They couldn't figure out how to not foul him. I mean, right. I know he only went to the line 5 or 6 times, but that adds up. I mean, those are free points. So credit to the Sixers. I didn't think they were going to.
Or Cueto, I don't know how you pronounce his name, but 88 on the Celtics.
Yeah, 88. I'm looking at the box right here.
Danny Dunn, my guy's got in the chat right now.
Nehemias Cueto, yeah. But so I mean he's serviceable, don't get me wrong, but he's not going to be able to stand in there against Joel Embiid for any sustained period of time. That's the problem. And that's what the 76ers were able to expose.
No, 100%. Did you see Joe Mazzulla after the game last night?
Yeah, and I have the clip ready.
All right, let's play some of it, because a lot of people are coming down his road with some of the weird things he said. And I go back to a couple of years ago, me and Steven used to make fun of him. When he was taking over as head coach of the Celtics, he had a quote where he was like, to ingratiate myself with the Boston crowd, I've watched The Town like every day. I watch it 5 times a day. And I was like, what a dumb thing to say. Of course you don't do that. Well, you watch that in The Departed over and over and over again.
That's what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking. Like, so you watch The Town, then you do Departed, and then you just one off. And
was it like Good Will Hunting after that? Like, come on, bro.
There's another good Boston movie. Yeah, that's true. With a couple of Boston. Hey, when is the sequel going to come out to Good Will Hunting, by the way?
Good. Oh, from you talk about from Jay and Silent Bob.
From Jay and Silent. Yeah, I'm glad you got that. Yeah,
season. That's great.
When you go after greatness, you have to accept the other side of that. And too many times, it's all about winning. But you have to surrender to the idea if you're gonna when you're going after that, you're gonna fail. And we've failed by not winning, but we stick to the process of being able to do that. But I think that's just kind of the duality of how things work. It's not an either or thing. It's both and you feel both of those things,
Okay, real quick. I got to go to the chat here. My guy, Danny. Don't come up until you know him. That's his favorite line from The Departed. God damn it, Danny. So Joe Mazzulla right there talking about the duality of winning and losing in sports. And we all know, like, that's a simple thing to say, but that is part of the process, funny enough, losing to the 76ers, that you fight, and in the end, you may not get the payoff. And that's what every athlete goes through. There's another quote he says there, and it's not good audio, but I'll just say it. Joe Mazzulla actually said last night, I felt the same emptiness I did last year in losing to the Knicks that I felt winning the championship. And I'm like, wow, that's a very odd thing to say. But I kind of understand it because I've heard a lot. I've heard through the years from athletes that when they win, they kind of feel the same thing when they lose, where it's like, this is it. I'm not fulfilled. Like I went through the grind and everything to get to this moment, and I still feel the same way if I lost. And that's a terrible feeling, I'm sure. Like there's the 1996 America's game with the Green Bay Packers, and Brett Favre wins the Super Bowl, and he admits to the camera saying, when I won, I see Reggie White, so happy, and Mike Holmgren so happy, and I'm just sitting there being like, damn, I don't feel the same way. Am I supposed to be feeling this? I'm sure it's a weird thing. Where he talked about it last night too. He loved this team, and he loved what they did all season long. He loved what they did in that game. He loved the looks he got, but it just wasn't enough. It just, in the end, like, he loves the same thing about this team, but it's just because the outcome wasn't good. It's like what Giannis said a couple years ago. Remember that, where someone asked him, is this season a failure? And he was like, it's not a failure. No, there's never a failure in sports. It may just be that you didn't do what you hoped to do, but it's never a failure. The whole process and grind of going through a regular season and fighting your ass off, yeah, to the fans, to the media, it's a failure. But to us, we went through something together. We'll always remember that. It's kind of like, Alon, have you seen the movie The Smashing Machine yet? I
love it. I love that movie. I saw it in theaters.
Okay, so that's about Mark Kerr, who was this celebrated UFC fighter and went through a lot during his life with opioid addiction, and he got the name The Smashing Machine. He was violent the way he fought, and in the end, he was not remembered because he didn't win. And some people don't like the movie. I think it's got a mixed reaction. I love the ending, and I think actually in time will become a cult classic with the way that the movie ends. It's very poignant, actually, where Mark Kerr can't get over everything that's going on with his life. His girlfriend has a lot going on, drugs. She's a bad influence on him, and he can't get that out of his head when he's in a match, and he loses. And the whole movie's about him just like going through this and everything that it takes, all the sacrifices he makes, and he loses. And then his best friend, Mark Coleman, wins. And you see the difference in how both men react, where Mark Coleman wins the championship. He goes backstage. He's all by himself. He's sitting there, and he's like, okay, is this it? Like, is this what I'm supposed to feel? And then Mark Kerr, played by The Rock, goes to the shower, and he just starts laughing because he's like, all right, I can move on with my life. This doesn't define who I am. I think it was actually pretty moving. And I wonder how sports fans will react as the years come with the ending of that movie. That's what I thought about when I hear Joe Mazzulla talk, where he said, I wasn't fulfilled. I was still empty from winning that championship. I'm like, damn, that's sad. But also, like, I'm sure that's what happens with a lot of coaches and athletes.
Yeah, I wish that the context of that answer, or the arena for that answer, wasn't him at a post-game press conference, because I think that's something that needs more. It needs to be in a sense where maybe he's sitting down more comfortable. Like, not that he's not comfortable at a post-game presser, but just that's a lot to unpack there. And I think it's almost unfair sometimes for quotes like that to come out in those post games, because we can see we can feel what he's feeling in that. Like, that's a very real statement there, but because of the constraint, he's not able to really expound upon it. But yeah, I mean, I think there's guys like that, like Giannis's answer a few years ago. That was perfect, because there's a lot of guys out there, athletes, high-level athletes, where there's some where it's just like they win and they love it, and then they're like, I just want more of this. And then there's others where the whole thing is the process. The whole thing is the grind. That's the glory in the work. Like, they want to get to that end destination. They want to get to the mountaintop there. But in their minds, like, all those things that they remember, it's not just, the moment I won. It's all the work they put in, all the grind they did with their teammates, all that kind of stuff. So I think that's what Missoula is kind of talking about. And I think that's what a lot of athletes are talking about. Unfortunately for them, most of the time when those statements come out, they're not on some 30 for 30 sit down or something like that.
Yeah.
They're always in a post game thing and they get picked apart.
Right.
I wouldn't pick apart Joe Missoula. People shouldn't be going down his road. They should understand exactly what he's talking about if they think about it. If they think about the fact that he's not looking at it like a fan, like every season is its own little thing. It's a continuum for guys like that, where it is a process from day one when he stepped into the building all the way until, when he finally decides to hang up the clipboard and retire. So I think people should get on board with, there are athletes and coaches out there who think that way, who feel that way, where it's not just about winning. It's not just about losing. It's about, and they want to win, but it's about the process and all the work they put in and just competing with themselves and being great just for greatness' sake, regardless of how many championships you win.
Yeah, and that's what Bird is in the chat here saying. Like, KD in some ways probably went through that when he won with the Warriors at parades. He seemed so ho-hum. Yeah. I think it's because he never really felt respected or accepted. I think a lot of guys feel that way. Like, even though Klay Thompson showed more joy than anybody winning those championships, not in relation to Megan Thee Stallion and what's going on with that, but like, I think he's finding himself post-basketball, like when, the grind and everything of playing for the Mavericks, and then the season turns out the way it did. It's like, what is this all for? Like, it's a lot for athletes and coaches when all that's done, and it doesn't matter wins and losses anymore in life. It's just life. That scares a lot of people. That's why, like, I'm sure Steve Kerr's battling with coming back, where it's like, I want to live a life, but I also love the competitive nature of basketball, of sports. And once that's taken away, it's like, this could be really real, but like, I have my friends, I have my family, but that's not enough sometimes. So, yeah, I like what you said, Alon, with Joe Missoula, because yes, I understand what he's saying, and that'll be picked apart. And I'm sure the Boston media tomorrow on Sports Talk Radio will have a field day with that. But it's a deeper thing than what he's talking about than just what was said in a post-game press conference. That's something you sit down and dive into and dissect a little bit more. Joe Missoula, I completely understand what he's saying, but I think once like a post-game of a game of that magnitude happens and you say that in a post-game press conferences, Barstool, all those guys are going to be like, you felt empty after winning a championship? What's wrong with you?
Yeah. And that's all from people who are going to say, not all of it, but most of that is going to be from people who've never won a championship in their life, in anything. Of course. And whether they're successful in the media, it doesn't matter. It's just, it's a different perspective. And so sometimes guys need the carrot on the stick, right? And they just keep going after that. And that's what they get out of it. They get that championship, and then there's, okay, the carrot's back out there, I keep going. But for other people, sometimes it's literally just running the race that makes them, that gets them going. I think Steve Kerr's that kind of guy. Just running the race. Like what you said, I got my family, I got my friends, I got all these other things I like. But there's this other thing that really fires me up and lets me self-actualize and become maybe the best version of myself that I can. And I think that's what the process and the work does for a lot of these high-level athletes and coaches. Yeah.
And we talked about coaching and the impact that it has on, teams, especially the Nuggets. And, the Nuggets right now, they lose in 6 to the Minnesota Timberwolves. And you called that series beforehand, Alon, where we know the Nuggets have had their issues against the Timberwolves. They lost 2 years ago in a Game 7. Great back and forth series that this was. And despite losing Anthony Edwards and Dante DiVincenzo and Ayo Dosunmu,
I'll leave that for you. I think that's one of the best pronunciations I've heard from a non-broadcaster, like TV broadcaster. Just the games, but yeah.
Anytime will tell me if I nailed that one. But they didn't have any of those guys at Game 6 for the Timberwolves, and in the end, they win. They move on. They beat the Denver Nuggets once again, and as I said earlier, I think they, Rick Carlisle's, or no, sorry, not Rick Carlisle. Who's the new head coach of the Denver Nuggets? I'll figure it out in a little bit here, but he's a son of a former Rick Adelman's son. David Adelman. He's fine and everything, but I still can't believe Michael Malone's not there. So I think they need to make some changes. It's 3 years removed from the last championship, or the only championship they've ever had. Jokic right now is going through what Michael Jordan went through against the Pistons. He's getting mauled against the Timberwolves. And Rudy Gobert knows how to play excellent defense on him. They need to get more scorers on that team. Jamal Murray he was that guy once upon a time, putting up 51 in a playoff game when they were in the bubble. He's not that guy anymore. And they made some additions with Cam Johnson, Tim Hardaway, Valanciunas. Just wasn't enough in the end. So I think it's the lack of coaching, and I think it's the lack of a supporting cast for Jokic. And I think Jokic needs to go in the weight room this offseason and learn how to bang with Rudy Gobert and Anthony Edwards, Gina McDaniels, all those guys that Minnesota has, and give a ton of credit to Minnesota for what they've accomplished. They have so much depth on their team. They're probably the only team that can trade for Giannis this offseason and still be fine and have to gut the roster. You may have to give up Gina McDaniels in the process, but I wouldn't do that. That guy's unbelievable. We'll see what happens with them against the Spurs, but Minnesota is so impressive the way they handle that series without their stars.
Got to give Julius Randle his flowers as well.
Absolutely.
Just what he was able to do with a depleted, kind of front line there. It's incredible. So they're just a gritty team. I like your point about Jokic. There's no reason he shouldn't be able to, with his frame and his weight overall, bang with those guys down there in the low post, but he is getting mauled and he needs help. I hate it. There's two teams I think that are so centered around one guy in the NBA. One is the Warriors, obviously, with Steph Curry.
Yeah. Yep.
The other is the Nuggets. The other is the Nuggets with Nikola Jokic. It's as Jokic goes, that team goes. And I know we can say that for a lot of different teams with superstar players, but Jokic does everything for that team. And every year they're banged up, and he's starting to get banged up a little bit too. So I'm not saying he needs an entire, body transformation, but he does need to do some things maybe to add some more strength to his game, because he's capable of being that guy, but that front office needs to get him help.
No question about that. So people have thrown out there, should, the Rockets and Nuggets do a trade where KD goes to the Nuggets and Jamal Murray goes to the Rockets? I don't know about that. I wonder about KD's future after the Lakers beat the Rockets in 6, and that was a depleted Lakers team without Luka Doncic. Austin Reeves came back for, I think, a couple games, but that Rockets team should have won. That team that I saw a year ago that was feisty, that still had Dylan Brooks and Jalen Green, but that team did not show up against the Lakers. And I'm not going to put it all on KD, but man, KD missed 5 games in this 6-game series. And yes, he was dealing with a bone bruise. His body has not held up the same way it has. And let's be honest, he's always been injury prone, but since the Achilles tear with the Warriors, he's just not been the same guy as far as his health, and really hasn't been the same player. And let's be honest, since he's left the Warriors, he's only won 2 playoff series. Think about that. Kevin Durant, how incredible he is, has not been truly a great leader. When he left to go do his own thing with the Nets and bringing along Kyrie Irving and James Harden, he had great performances in that playoff series against the Bucks, but it wasn't enough. And then he wanted to move off of those guys and get Steve Nash fired. Then he wanted to go to Phoenix, and then he blamed those guys. And now he's in Houston, and this whole thing with his burner account, calling out his teammates. I don't know if he has respect from the locker room in Houston right now. My little brother just called me. He lives in Houston. He told me about a friend of his that was calling out Kevin Durant on Instagram. Kevin Durant was responding to him.
Jeez.
Which has been Kevin Durant's MO for the last 15 years now. I'm so sick of it. KD, you are Kevin fucking Durant. As he told the Bay Area reporters years ago, you know who I am, right? I'm Kevin Durant. Yes. Then why are you responding to people on Twitter? It makes no sense to me. He's the most insecure superstar I have ever seen. And I'm losing respect for him where he's doing shit like this and then not performing on the basketball court, not even showing up. And I know that he's hurt, but damn, man, LeBron is going to have a better legacy than Kevin Durant in the end, which bothers me. But yeah, give props to the Lakers, give props to LeBron James. And yeah, I'm scratching my head with the way that the Rockets season ended with Kevin Durant.
I mean, game 3 Game 3 is their season right there.
Yeah, the way that one ended was awful.
Yeah, and I know they come back and win the next 2, but then it almost seems like they don't even show up for the closeout game. And it's just, yeah, I mean, some of it is on Kevin Durant for sure. I understand the injury thing, but there's a point where pride comes into play and where he can come in and just go, I'm going to grit through this. Because you know what? There's a guy on the other side who would and who does, and that's LeBron James. I'm not comparing KD to LeBron in terms of, toughness or leadership or things like that, but there's got to be something in you that says if he can go out there and play through, and he's like 45 years old, I can go out there and play. Yeah. I know I'm hurt, but I can do something.
Right. No, that's kind of where I'm at right now, and it's not fair to compare, but we did a long time ago. We did almost 8 years ago, where I was defending KD and him being the greatest player in basketball, and I remember them having that debate on the old NBA show on ESPN with Michelle Beadle, and they were all laughing at whoever brought that up. Like, you're insane. LeBron James is so much better than Kevin Durant. I still think that's debatable, but just the way Kevin Durant has gone about things post the Warriors, I don't have that argument anymore. It's clearly where LeBron James has not only been a better player, he's been a better leader, and Kevin Durant does not have those qualities.
No, he doesn't, and it's been shown now. I mean, the last time he really kind of had to show those qualities, or it did show those qualities, were probably back when he was with OKC. But even then, Russell Westbrook was kind of the vocal, more kind of fiery.
He was more the alpha than Kevin Durant was, honestly.
Yeah, he was, and maybe to that team's detriment at times. But Kevin Durant has had opportunities to show this, whether it was in Brooklyn, whether it was in Phoenix, and he hasn't for whatever reason. And didn't show it this year with Houston. Getting back to the best, greatest thing, like, look, there's a hard distinction there. I don't think there's anything wrong, especially during the peak of Kevin Durant's powers with the Warriors, that he was not the best basketball player on planet Earth. He was, but he's not the greatest. He was not the greatest basketball player because of all those other things. He had the skill, he had all those things, but maybe he does not have the will that someone like a LeBron James has shown his entire career.
Yeah. As far as the other series, the Magic and Pistons just wrapped up Game 7. The Pistons are moving on, came back from a 3-1 deficit themselves. Game 6 was unbelievable, where the Magic were leading 62-38 in the third quarter, and then the Magic go Houston Rockets from the Western Conference Finals from a few years ago, where they missed 27 consecutive three-point shots. The Magic would miss 23 consecutive shots, and Detroit went on a 35-3 run. It's the first time a team lost an elimination game and they were leading by 24 or more since 1997. They lose the series. That's a hard series to lose for the Magic. Detroit's moving on, and they'll take on the winner of the Cavaliers and the Raptors. And by the way, that Game 6, RJ Barrett went Kawhi into the same type of shot to beat the 76ers and Joel Embiid, where at the buzzer, he goes for a three, the ball tips in, tip, and then banks in. Same thing with RJ Barrett to get them the victory in overtime. And that Game 7 goes down in about 10 minutes here. So we'll be off before then. So just to recap how things went in the first round, Alon dominated me. He had the Lakers winning in 7. I had the Rockets winning in 6. He had the T-Wolves winning in 7. I had the Nuggets winning in 7. We both had the Spurs winning, but I said Spurs in 5. You said Spurs in 4. You had OKC winning in 5. I had OKC winning in 5. The Thunder swept. The Knicks won in 6. That kind of rhymes. So Alon got that right. I had Knicks in 5, and we both got the Celtics wrong. We both had the Celtics winning, or you had the Celtics winning in 4. I had the Celtics winning in 5. In the end, the 76ers win the series in 7. All right, well, let's pick the second round of the playoffs. We still don't know what the matchup is going to be between the Pistons or either the Cavaliers or Raptors, but we'll pick that one just for the sake of starting things off. So let's do a little something we call wins, as I get the music going. Also, something we call wins or wings. All right, Alon. And I lost, so I will do the hot sauce as we end things here. Okay, but let's just start off in the West. T-Wolves taking on the Spurs. I don't know when Anthony Edwards is coming back. It sounds like maybe Game 3 or Game 4 of this series. But how do you see the series going along?
This is tough. If Anthony Edwards was back already, I'd be picking the Timberwolves, just because I think they can do it. They're battle tested, but I think they're. You know what? I think Wemby's going to have a tough time in this series. I'm going to go T-Wolves in 6.
Whoa!
I think Rudy Gobert is. Do they have a Defensive Player of the Playoffs award? If they don't, they should, and they should model it after Gobert.
No, he's been unbelievable with his defense on Jokic. I think the injury is going to play a factor here, though. I think the Spurs are really talented. It may be where it's too much for them, for they've done so much going from, 32 wins a year ago to now getting to the second round. Yeah, I hear you, Alon. If Anthony Edwards was healthy, I could see an upset, but I think it's going to be too late for them. So give me the Spurs in 7. I think it's going to be a tough, hard-fought series, but give me San Antonio in the end. All right, then we got the Lakers. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. I know we're picking, but do we think these games are going to be closer as this second round begins? I'm not talking about series being close, but these games I hope
so.
Okay.
I hope so. I mean, like in basketball now, like it could be where it's competitive for the most part, and then teams pull away in the fourth quarter. The series have been competitive. I'm with you. I want them where the actual games are.
Yeah.
In this next series, I don't think it's going to be the case with the Lakers and Thunder. I'll just give you my prediction. I think OKC wins in 5. I think there's going to be way too much for LeBron and company. I think Luka is not going to be healthy for this series. Give me the Thunder in 5.
Luka's nowhere close to returning, according to Windhorst.
Yeah.
So that's pretty significant. He knows. I'm going to go underdog. I'm going to go Lakers. I'm going to go Lakers.
Really?
7. Yeah. I think LeBron is this is his final feather in his cap, maybe.
All righty. Another bold prediction from Alon. And Danny Junn's calling out the picks right now. Chalk picks for me in the West. East, I'll go Knicks and winner of the Cavs Raptors. Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that one, Danny. So we got the 76ers and the Knicks. What do you see in this matchup, Alon, where we might see Joel Embiid sit out game 1?
Yeah, I think if Joel Embiid sits out, that's a major problem for the Sixers. We already saw what it looks like for them when he sat out against the Celtics. But I think Karl Anthony Towns and the Knicks are just the better team. They should be able to win. I'll go Knicks in 6 once again.
I'm going to go Knicks in 7. I think the familiarity will be a factor. We saw it with these division rivals playing last round between the Celtics and the 76ers. I think this 76ers team is going to go on a run here, just as far as their competitive nature, and you see the youth with Tyrese Maxey and Edgecombe. And Embiid's just so hard to defend. It's going to be interesting between him and Karl Anthony Towns, the matchup there. But the Knicks are the more talented team. If you're giving me the coaches, I would go Nick Nurse over Mike Brown, but I'm going to go with the talent on the court. So give me the Knicks in 7 over the 76ers. And then we got the Pistons taking on either the Raptors or the Cavs. I got to believe the Cavaliers move forward. So if that's the case, Alon, where are you going?
If the Cavaliers move forward, I hate it because the Pistons have had a great season, but this first round series, it's just that doesn't bode well for them going forward after I was going to say playing with their food, but that's not what it was. The Magic beat them down quite a few times. So I would take the Cavs over the Pistons, as crazy as that sounds, the 4 beating the 1 in this case when the Pistons had such a good season. But I think if the Cavs win, they'll beat the Pistons.
How many games?
I think 6. I'm
going to say the same thing. And that wouldn't be too crazy because a year ago we saw the 4-seed Pacers beat the 100-win team. Or sorry, not 100 wins, but that'd be insane. I'm thinking of basketball or baseball here. I think there were 60-win. They were the 60-win Cavaliers from a year ago. So I think, yes, I'm with you. If the Cavaliers advance in about 4 minutes here in Game 7, I think the Cavaliers will beat the Pistons. Now, if it's the Raptors, I'll give the edge to the Pistons, but I do believe the Cavs win tonight, and we get a Cavs-Pistons series, and the Cavaliers move on.
Yeah, I agree with you there as well. I think if the Raptors move on, I have to give the edge to the Pistons, but the Cavs, I think, can get it done against Detroit.
So there you go. Those are our picks for the second round of the NBA playoffs. And I was trying to time it up with the music here, and that's what exactly is going to happen if I keep talking and then I turn the music off. Yeah. Cool. Alrighty. While I pay up to the punishment of losing in picks, I got my chip right here. I got my hot sauce. And I'll double up on the hot sauce because I know earlier in the chat, Roccanero was calling me out saying it has no effect on Derek. So that's the problem, guys. It does have an effect. It's just the next day. You don't see it, but it'll slow me down a little bit. And it's been a while since I've had this type of hot sauce. But Alon, I do want to get your thoughts on something that happened in college football this past week. Brendan Sorsby, quarterback of Texas Tech, checked himself into rehab for a gambling addiction. He's under NCAA investigation in the wake of the discovery that Sorsby made thousands of bets, small-time bets, but he didn't make thousands of bets, on Indiana football while he was redshirting in 2022. He placed the bets on Indiana to win, in which games he did not appear. They were small bets, but quite significant the amount of bets he made. So your thoughts on this scandal in college football, Alon?
This is what we get when we have legalized sports gambling. I mean, this is what's unfortunately gonna keep happening. And yeah, it's a sad story, but also like Brendan Sorsby, are you kidding me, man? Like, you're placing bets. I don't care if it's on your own team to win. Doesn't matter to me. Like, you're a college athlete and you're doing that. It's just shows a total lack of judgment. And I don't care if his buddies can bet and he's like, well, why can't I bet? No, I'm sorry. And then checking into rehab for gambling addiction. Look, everybody's got their battles, but I don't know if he's really addicted or if he hired the Deflategate lawyer to represent him as well. He's trying to keep his eligibility. It seems it's so hard not to be pessimistic. I hope that he doesn't gamble anymore because it seems to have ruined his college football career. But yeah, it's a horrible story. Look, I'm not going to pick him as jackass of the week, but that is some high jackassery right there. And I don't have a lot of sympathy for people who are like, oh, I just couldn't stop gambling on my own team. I'm sorry, dude. You know better than that. You know way better than that. That's a tough pill for him to swallow. I hope he learned his lesson.
I'm with you on that one. I think that when you devote your life to athletics and you're going to be, in the college ranks or professional level, you have to know that's something that you cannot do. I know that it might seem unfair because the public get to do it. That's too bad. You chose this life, man. Now, it does feel a little bit like PR with what you're saying, Alon, with the fact that he's going into rehab. But I do think that there's probably an avenue for him to go to the supplemental draft. So let me ask you this. Like, what was and again, this changes every year. Like, we thought Garrett Nussmeier was going to be the first overall pick for this last draft. What's the evaluation on Brendan Sorsby right now going into the season and then where he would be in the draft come 2027?
I mean, we're probably looking at like a mid-round quarterback, right? I mean, maybe
so
later.
He's not like I heard some people say he might be a top 10 pick.
I know that's what people say, but so independent of this, are you saying like if the gambling thing didn't happen?
If the gambling thing didn't happen, what was his trajectory as far as being a pick?
Yeah, I mean, we can think about him in terms of like a Garrett Nussmeier type of guy, like a guy that we could see being an early quarterback drafted. Yeah, sure. Assuming his play on the field, is commensurate with it. But now with this aspect into it, like, I mean, you're taking a real flyer on this guy just from a character standpoint. I mean, it's not that he's a bad quarterback, but now that we know this, his judge, oh God, I'm glad we don't. Yeah, it is. You don't have to do it to yourself. But I'm glad that sounds like a stale chip too. But
it's sitting out for a while.
Yeah, that's good. But I think when you have a guy who does this, let's say he has an incredible season, right? This still shows a major lapse in judgment. He could have a great season and he could be a top 5 quarterback in college football. And I think he's a guy that doesn't get drafted where he normally would just because of this now.
I hear you. Now, there is an avenue for him to be taken in the supplemental draft. I saw Tom Pelissero talking about this on the Rich Eisen show, where he's looking to regain his eligibility, but if unsuccessful, he will look to go into these NFL supplemental draft, and he has until June 30th to decide on that. The last guy to be taken in the supplemental draft was Jalen Thompson back in 2019. So it's been a minute. But I got to believe with the way the NFL looks at gambling, excuse me for my hiccups, that will be hard for the league to look past. Like, it's different with Terrell Pryor and his stuff with the NCAA and the Raiders taking him because he was getting tattoos. With Brendan Sorsby, he was gambling. But it's a different deal. I got to believe that if he does get drafted in the supplemental draft, he'll be suspended during the NFL regular season.
Well, yeah, I could see that happening. Just from, hey, we can't have this, and you need to. I know you probably already learned your lesson, but you're going to have to learn it again. This is just part of the protocol here. We cannot have gambling scandals in the NFL. That makes total sense. I'm thinking about Brendan Sorsby. So, like, if you watch him play, like, you know, bigger guy, not huge, but pretty mobile for a pocket passer. I don't know, like. We've seen Will Levis play. How good is Will Levis in the NFL? Not very good.
Not good at all. So, he's a backup, and then when he did play, he was making ridiculous mistakes.
Yeah, he's horrendous. So I don't know. I don't know about Brendan Sorsby, and this is just going to cloud things even more. But let's just say this didn't happen. Maybe second round quarterback. I don't think he's one of the best of the best out of all the guys who would have come out next year. But I think second, third round quarterback. That's what I think.
And I wonder if it's going to be even worth it for some teams to deal with that headache of getting a quarterback in the supplemental draft just to be a backup this year, and then they get suspended. Like, that defeats the whole purpose of having a backup quarterback. So we shall see, but most likely his days at Texas Tech are done and his days in college football are over. Real quick. Report that came a couple days ago. Sounds like Russell Wilson is going to retire and go into television to be on Inside the NFL. Sorry, not Inside the NFL, but the NFL Today on CBS will be a part of that pregame show with Nate Burleson, Bill Cowher. Matt Ryan was the quarterback on that show, and Russell Wilson will replace him. It sounds like that probably becomes official this week. When you think about Russell Wilson retiring and going into television, you think he'd be good at it, Alon, or he's going to be too much of a cheese D?
He is cheesy, but I think it's perfect for him. And it's finally time for him to hang it up, which is good for him. And I think that's a good show for him to be on as well, where I think you can be kind of Russell Wilson and not be under a whole lot of screen. It's like I don't know how well he'd be like in the booth. So I think it's a really good opportunity in TV, this setting for him, rather than like being in the booth or being an analyst.
Oh, 100%. He would get ridicule if he was doing, a game.
Yes.
Because we all know how that goes with Tony Romo and Booger McFarland, Jason Witten. But with Russell Wilson, if you're just on a pregame show, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, honestly. Because how many people watch pregame shows anymore? He's perfect for that, where it's in the morning. He could be cheesy. He'll probably break it down pretty well. But as far as like a game, no. That's where you get more Twitter backlash, and we know he gets a ton of it. But, yeah, I think him being on a pregame show would benefit him greatly. And
he's a good-looking guy. He's not offensive. He's not going to piss anybody off outside of, like, I can't stand Russell Wilson when he was on the Seahawks, like, just because, you're some disgruntled fan. So, yeah, no, it's a perfect match. Real quick, Derek, I just wanted to think about the Brendan Sorsby thing. Yeah. I have a list of the quarterbacks who are going to be eligible for next draft. He's not better than Julian Sand. He ain't better than Dante Moore. He ain't better than Arch Manning. Jaden Maiava, I think, is very good at USC. CJ Carr, Notre Dame. I mean, Mateer, even at Oklahoma. Sam Levitt. Like, there's guys that are way higher up on the board, I would think, than Sorsby. So, yeah, supplemental draft, probably a good idea for him.
Yeah, probably will be the way to go. Okay, before we get out of here, we haven't done it in weeks. Jackass of the week. Who you got, Alon?
I have Mrs. Kelly Stafford.
Oh.
Yes.
Please explain.
Kelly Stafford, the wife of LA Rams superstar quarterback Matthew Stafford, made clear that she believed it is, quote, highly disrespectful, end quote, to her husband when he is called Matt. So he says this: when she says this, when people don't know him, they call him Matt, she wrote via the California Post. What gets me mad is that he's been playing in this league now for close to 2 decades, and people who have jobs reporting on it still call him Matt. I find it highly disrespectful, but honestly kind of goes along with Matthew's whole career. Who's been disrespecting Matthew Stafford his whole career? His whole career, we've said, wow, that guy keeps the Lions afloat, him and Calvin Johnson. Then he gets to LA, he gets the keys of the city handed to him, and he's a phenomenal quarterback. Look, his name's Matthew Stafford. Sometimes you just say Matt Stafford instead. Patrick Mahomes gets called Pat Mahomes. I mean, are you kidding? And I think Patrick Mahomes' dad is Pat Mahomes, so maybe that's not as big of a deal, but this is not disrespectful.
His mom doesn't like that, yeah.
His mom doesn't like. This is not disrespectful to call Matthew Stafford, Matt Stafford. Is it what if I called Matt Ryan, Matthew Ryan?
Yeah.
What was it disrespectful when Michael Vick said, "Hey, don't call me Mike. My name's Michael." Okay.
Was it disrespectful when Tim Ryan would call Jimmy Garoppolo Jim Garoppolo or James Garoppolo?
I like that.
Yeah,
I like Jim.
Exactly. So, and like my guy Danny Dunn in the chat here, sometimes we just call him Dan Dunn when his name's Danny, or Daniel, whatever. But yeah, that's to me that's harmless. That's just Kelly Stafford being a wife. But I think it's a ridiculous comment. But it's a ridiculous comment she made on a podcast. People say ridiculous things on podcasts all the time.
They do. They do. But she was my one. It was low hanging fruit there for me. And Matt Stafford's a Georgia guy, and I'm an Alabama guy. So I was like, okay, how do we up the stakes here, UGA? But yeah, I find it highly disrespectful. But it goes along with Matthew's whole career. You know what? Save it, Kelly. I don't want to hear it.
Well, AJ Cruz brings up, Alon, would you be insulted if I called you Al?
No, you can call me that. I mean, no one ever has, but you'd be the first.
Well, didn't the late great Michael Urban call you Lonnie?
Yeah, Lonnie. Yeah, I didn't mind that. That was fine. That was our little thing. It was his pet name for me.
No, I like that. And I'm sure if you ask Matthew Stafford what's more disrespectful, people calling me Matt or the Rams drafting my replacement, he'll probably say the Rams drafting my replacement and Ty Simpson. Fuck that guy.
Yeah. Also, like, what's Ty's full name? I don't know. Tyler Simpson?
Probably, yeah. Probably.
Yeah. So what if people called him like Tyler Simp? That's not good.
Ooh, no. No one wants to be called a simp these days, Alon. Okay, my jackass of the week, Shiloh Sanders. So, Mary Kay Cabot, who's been covering the Cleveland Browns since 1988, very respected journalist in the NFL, been covering Cleveland sports and the Browns for a long time. She put out an article saying that it's probably the best interest of the Cleveland Browns just to name Deshaun Watson the starter, because that's the way things are going. Shiloh Sanders, in defense of his brother Shador, went to social media and told Mary Kay Cabot, "Why don't you make me a sandwich?" Come on, bro. Come on. That's where Dion or Shador need to get to him and say, don't do shit like that. That's you think you're being funny? You're not. You're being a jackass. You're telling a woman to go make you a sandwich. And maybe that wasn't your intention, but we all know what you really meant. So that's lame as fuck. I'm sorry. Like Mary Kay Cabot, one of the best. Take gender out of it. She's one of the best journalists covering a local team or the local side of things when it comes to covering a team for a long time now. That's bullshit. And she's probably getting that information from ownership, whether that's Jimmy Haslam or somebody, to suggest that Deshaun Watson will be the starting quarterback. So that's lame as fuck for Shiloh to do that. So, yeah, Shiloh Sanders, you are my jackass of the week for that comment. All right. Should we do a little pop culture catch-up, Alon? Have you watched anything, read anything, listened to anything?
I have watched something recently, and what's very interesting is one of our friendly opiners in the comments earlier, it was AJ Cruz, actually somehow knew what I watched. So that's what I watched. I watched the Hulk Hogan documentary. It was like a 4-part, I think 4 or 6 on Netflix.
I've been intrigued to watch this. How was it?
It was really good, and I'm not a big sports documentary person, or this is not sports, it's wrestling, but I don't watch a lot of these documentaries. So the other night I finally watched the Vince McMahon one, and I thought that was really good.
That's a really good one.
And then it said, would you like to watch this Hulk Hogan one? And I went, oh, what the hell? So I spent the next day kind of watching that. It was on the weekend. And it was awesome. I mean, there were times where it was sad. Some of it's funny because Hulk Hogan told so many lies during his life.
Yeah.
So some of it you're like, I wonder if this is true. But it was good. It was a really good arc. It was a really good arc, not just showing his career, but it also kind of showed the cultural evolution of, pop culture in America as well. And kind of from a political science standpoint, because that's what I study. It was interesting to see the kind of, I don't know, ebbs and flows of nationalism that have also flowed through this country as well, and have been shown through things like professional wrestling. So I highly recommend it. I thought it was good. And I thought maybe the best part about it was this was not just getting other people's opinions either. Like there was Bret Hart and a few, there were his ex-wife, Linda. There was a lot of Sky, who I believe was his last wife before when he passed. They had a lot of different interviews with different people. His son, Nick Hogan, who you can tell it's been tough on him, but the amount of content they got with Hulk Hogan makes it amazing. And so I thought they found a really good balance there between getting his perspective and then bringing other people in, not just a puff. It wasn't a puff piece. It was a realistic look at who the man was.
Okay. I loved the Vince McMahon documentary, which covered it all with WWE. And they were honest in that one. Is it honest with what went on with Hulk Hogan later in his life?
100%. It gets into the whole Bubba the Love Sponge stuff. It gets into, him using racial slurs. It gets into, I like that it actually got into the Gawker case too, because that's all tied in with that. And Gawker had made a living off of, right or wrong, exposing celebrities and all this, exposing their privacy. But so it got into that. So that was very fascinating. It even went so far as to get into the fact that, he divided his fan base by going to the Republican National Convention and doing that. It showed everything for better or for worse.
Okay.
So it was an honest look. And I thought the people that they brought in to also talk about him, whether it was Jimmy Hart or some of these other people, it was good. You had people who, in their mind, he's the Hulkster. He can do no wrong. And you had other people saying, no, this was a real person who was flawed. But the character itself wasn't flawed, but the man definitely was.
Did they start this documentary while he was still alive, and was he a part of it?
Yes.
Okay.
All the interviews are with him, and I think the last one took place. All of the interview footage they used with him, I think, was recorded over a time span that maybe ended within 3 months of his passing.
Okay, interesting.
Right up to the end. Very similar to how, in the Vince thing, where the allegations came out, and they're the allegations came out during this interview. So the timing was, in this case, perfect, I would say.
Yeah, I love when documentaries tell the whole story, and that's the way it should be. I'm not going to see the Michael Jackson movie, the biopic that comes out, because it's missing a lot. Yeah. And to me, when you're going to do a story on somebody's life, it needs to be everything, warts and all. That's why I liked Straight Outta Compton. I would have loved it more if they were honest about some things with Dr. Dre and Eazy. With Michael Jackson, the new movie that's coming out, they do nothing about the child molestation allegations. I'm not saying that I want to see that stuff. I'm just saying, you need to represent the person accurately. So the fact that they do that with Hulk Hogan, I'm very intrigued by the documentary. Haven't had time to watch it yet, but I will. Danny Dunn in the chat here says, Scream 7, Derek? Haven't got around to seeing Scream 7. It's not available on Paramount Plus, as you know, Daniel. So eventually I will go and watch Scream 7, and I will rank all of the 7 Screams that I've watched. Ernie 2 in the chat here says, wife wanted to watch Devil Wears Prada 2 on Thursday. Isn't that one of your favorite movies, Alon?
Oh, I haven't seen Devil Wears, it's rocking, but I haven't seen Devil Wears Prada 2 yet, but I love the original. So I'm very excited to go to the theaters. I had to wait. I wasn't going to see it on opening, or no, it's on Thursday on May 5th, I think, or no, what day is it? Is it out May 1st? It's out, I think May 1st. The new movie? Yeah.
I think it came out last week.
Yeah, I think it came out Thursday night was the premiere. So anyway, my strategy is to wait, because I know that crowd is probably pretty feisty, Derek. That crowd seeing Devil Wears Prada too.
Fierce,
and fierce, yes. So I was like, okay, I'll pick like a Tuesday morning at 11 a.m. and I'll go see it. And yeah, that way I can, that crowd is going to be more vicious than the crowds that go see, the Avengers movies or anything else. So.
Oh God, yeah. Speaking of Netflix documentaries, I did watch the Red Hot Chili Peppers documentary called Our Brother Halal. And Halal Slovak was one of their original guitarists who unfortunately passed away from a drug overdose. He was influential in the band, being, great friends with Flea and Anthony Kiedis. So just watching that, and I don't think a lot of, Red Hot Chili Peppers is my favorite band of all time. I don't think there's a lot of documentaries made about them. If you read books on them, about Anthony Kiedis and his life, struggles with sex addiction and drug addiction. Same thing with Flea, but not about like them growing up together. Not a lot about like their upbringing as far as like a documentary standpoint. So it was interesting to see this stuff. I knew about Halal a lot from their original days when they were, originally the band was What Is This? And then became Red Hot Chili Peppers, and then Anthony Kiedis became the lead singer. Once Halal passed away, they brought in John Frusciante, and I never knew that John Frusciante was basically just a huge Chili Peppers fan and wanted to emulate Halal so much that he just copied him, and then he came into his own once they started doing Blood Sugar Sex Magic and all the big records. So. Yeah, I wish there was more made of the Chili Peppers, all their struggles. It's funny where Halal a Slovak passed away from drugs, and John Frusciante, his whole career with the Chili Peppers was on and off again because of his drug use. I would love to see a documentary on John Frusciante. He's a great guitarist and pretty much made them who they were in the 90s with his guitar playing, unbelievable. But he had his own demons, to the point where I don't even know if he showed up for their Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction. So, yeah, the Chili Peppers have been around for 40 years now, and I don't think there's enough made about them. So I'd love to see more documentaries about my personal favorite band, the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Pat H showing up right where we're about to end the show, man. Damn.
It's on Netflix, Derek?
Yeah, it's on Netflix. Our Brother Halal. I keep calling him Halal. It's Halal. Yeah. Halal Slovak.
I'm gonna check that out because I like the Red Hot Chili Peppers as well. What's your favorite? What's your favorite song?
Probably Scar Tissue.
Great song.
My dad and my mom, and they kind of grew up with it. It's funny, they were big, not really big, but like in the 80s in LA, the Red Hot Chili Peppers were known as like this underground, LA band. And then they became, they were known for performing naked and being insane. And then Blood Sugar Sex Magic, maybe before that, maybe Mother's Milk gave them their mainstream success. But really it was Give It Away and Under the Bridge, Suck My Kiss, everything from Blood Sugar Sex Magic made them huge. And then there was the whole One Hot Minute era where they did one album with what's his name? Dave Navarro from Jane's Addiction. I love that album. I do love Aeroplane, that song from that album, but it just wasn't the same. They weren't as funky as they used to be. And then how I knew about the Chili Peppers was in '99, them coming out with Californication, where they became more of,
the music video was great too.
Oh yeah, music video was great. All Around the World, Scar Tissue. All their songs, they were more like poppy radio play, and that's how I got to know about the Chili Peppers. I mean, who doesn't love the Chili Peppers? I think that everyone says like it's their favorite band, and to me, like, yes, 100%. I love their style. So yeah, like I said, if there's a documentary made about them, I'm gonna watch. And yeah, I wish there was more made about them. Alrighty, I think that's it, everybody. But Danny down in the chat here has a question here. I forgot who won the Pat H. Derek bet again. Well, that was Pat H. because Ty Simpson went in the first round, went 13th overall. No, Dan, I did not buy Pat H an appetizer. I bought him a Coke, and that seemed
appetizer.
No, a Coke is fine. That's what we agreed upon.
Yeah,
Dan Dunn.
An appetizer. Come on, and it was a Pepsi too, because Jax only has Pepsi products.
Exactly. All right, everybody, that's gonna be it for tonight. We will see you guys on Wednesday. To everybody in the chat, thanks to Dan Dunn. I'll see you tomorrow, man. Thanks to Otis Bird. I think Danny Dunn's doing the morning show tomorrow, probably. To Otis Bird, to Pat H, to Rocka New Era. Welcome back, guys. AJ Cruz, Ernie One, and I believe that is it. All right, everybody. We'll see you guys on Wednesday. Alon, say what you say. Always, my friend.
You guys might think that the Rockets really blew it against the Lakers, but that's just your opinion, man. But they kind of did.